Thank you guys all so much for being patient. We're going to take like a 2-minute break and we'll be ready to start. Stephen Judson against Amador County Unified School District. The board voted 3-2 to approve the liability claim in the matter of claimant Stephen Judson. Upon final approval, the claimant has agreed to release the district from any and all claims in exchange for the payment of $25,000 by the Amador County Unified School District. Okay, and then are there any deletions or corrections to the agenda?
Just one deletion. We have the flu bug going through Argonaut High School, so we are going to reschedule their challenge coin recognitions at a later date.
Okay. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Just one side note, we did mention it earlier, but Mr. Marzano is actually joining us from Hawaii, so he will be listening and talking in. He's up on the screen. Okay, so we will move on to presentations and recognitions. We have the challenge coin recognitions in the business office with Mr. Norton.
Good evening, Board, and thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight to present our challenge coin for the business office. I think most of you know me, but I'll introduce myself here. I'm Robert Norton, the Interim Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, as well as the CBO. I'm here tonight to present a challenge coin to a truly exceptional member of our business office team. But before I begin, I really want to express my sincere gratitude to our entire business office team. Actually, quite a few of our members of our team are here tonight. I really think it helps show how strong of a team that we have right now in our business office. They work tirelessly behind the scenes to keep our district running smoothly. Often their hard work goes unnoticed in the business office. It's one of those things you really don't notice them until something goes wrong. But you know, these folks do great work. And so I'm really glad we're able to recognize them tonight in their commitment. So with that being said, it is my great pleasure to award this year's Business Office Challenge Coin to Rachel Miller. Rachel, please come forward. And I believe some of the folks have some stuff for you. I don't think you're very surprised by it.
I told you it wasn't for you.
Yes, you're gonna stay for all this. So I should start with the fact that this is actually not Rachel's first challenge coin. But actually her second. And I really say that goes to show you how much Rachel really emulates the what is considered our gold standard here, which really emulates what this honor means. It wasn't in the business office, I'll start with that there, but Rachel currently is a senior payroll technician, and really she's the epitome of a hard worker. I'm not sure I've ever given her a task that she hasn't tackled without enthusiasm or great efficiency. Rachel joined the business office after starting at Jackson Junior High School and is really as an administrative assistant for us there. And she applied for the payroll position with really no direct payroll experience. But really because of her work ethic there, her eagerness to learn has really been evident since the start. And I knew she would be a great fit, and really ever since then she's been outstanding. So thank you so much. She's quickly mastered all of our payroll applications and become quite the Excel expert. I note that because she constantly asks me all the time for how do you do this, how do I change that thing, and really I think now your skills definitely rival mine. Gave her an Excel test and she just killed it. But beyond that, Rachel consistently seeks out professional development opportunities and is always looking for ways to improve her skills, improve processes throughout our payroll department, business office as a whole. And in fact, in less than a year onto the job, she became our resident payroll expert, and it was even asked and expected to train other folks on how to do payroll. So you've done an outstanding job. Then speaking of dedication, I can never seem to get Rachel to go home. She's often one of the last people in the office. I regularly find myself walking into the payroll department at the end of the day and just proclaiming, go home, or how much longer are you gonna be here? But I mean, she reminds me each time, it's just because of her commitment. She wants to get everybody in Amador County paid. And so we really thank you truly for that. I'm sure everybody can kind of all thank you for that. But with that said, I believe really Rachel is a big part of this. Our payroll team, I like to call them miracle workers. We had to change some things this year where we actually shortened our timeline of completing hundreds of timesheets. And the work that goes into these timesheets is, checking for all the proper approvals, coding, pay rates, and so much more. And somehow, without fail, come Friday or whatever day the payroll falls on, we're balanced. No problem, done, easy. I'd like to say that it was easy, but it is definitely not an easy job. And then as my own role has expanded here with Amador, I've had to delegate more responsibilities where I can, and it can be a nerve-wracking experience. You never know if nothing's going to get handled correctly, but with Rachel, I've never had to worry. You've become one of my go-to people for many critical tasks. I rely on you for attending meetings on behalf of the business office, conducting major reconciliations, audits, and sometimes just trust you as a second set of eyes for doing many of different things on projects that have stumped me. And realistically, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I could go on and on about Rachel's contributions. She's our resident expert as it comes to retiree matters. She's incredibly personable, organized, and always comes to our Monday morning meetings prepared with a slew of things and topics that we need to go over and cover for the week to make sure we're on top of our things. So in short, Rachel, you're a valuable asset to our team. Thank you for all that you do for not only the business office, but Amador County as a whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next, we will move on to our employee organizations. I see Ms. Jensen with ACTA.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Cabinet members, Interim Superintendent Critchfield, and community members. At previous board meetings, the president of our classified union made some excellent comments that our classified staff are paid an hourly wage below what employees at fast food restaurants earn. Although last year, through the negotiations process, a portion of the cost of living adjustment was provided to all employees, classified and certificated, it was still only a portion of the COLA, and people are still struggling. President Parker commented that she desired to see those wages increase and be competitive in today's market. I want to bring this to your attention now because every decision made by you, the board, that involves spending money impacts every union's ability to negotiate higher wages that are competitive and commensurate to the work we do and competitive with surrounding districts. In keeping with that point, while active members received a 4.75 cost of living adjustment last year, our insurance premiums increased by 15%. We are struggling to make ends meet also. In order to attract and retain the highly qualified staff our students, schools, and community deserve, we must have a competitive wage and reasonable insurance rates, without which we are unable to fill vacant positions and stop the exodus of top-notch employees finding satisfying employment in districts with those competitive wages and benefits. We appreciate that you keep this in mind as you make decisions that involve spending money, which impacts the funds available to both meet your goals and our goals at the bargaining table. We cannot ask for what isn't there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. And next we have CSEA and Mr. Baird.
How's it going, board? Jared, cabinet. My name's Eric Baird, newly elected union president for CSEA 239. I came up here to pretty much echo the sentiment Ms. Jensen had. I want to thank you guys all for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of not just myself, but other members of the union. I stand there not just as a president, but also their voice, because they can't all be here, to speak for themselves. The workers I represent are the heart of this school district. We're the ones that ensure students arrive safely to and from school every day, the ones on a daily basis striving to provide clean and safe learning environments, the folks who supply nutritious meals, and the mental and emotional support these students need to succeed. But despite these vital efforts, our staff across the district, our wages sadly don't reflect the value of our contributions. We love the area. We want to continue to serve the children and families here in Amador County. However, with the rising cost of living and income we receive not increasing at an equal rate, many of our workers are looking for other options for employment. Nearby school districts pay much higher wages. Many of our staff have already left this county and will travel an hour plus for fair wages. My goal as a CSEA 239 president is to push for change. I know that I've already been working with these guys, with on stuff like this, but they've already been friendly and easy to work with. So I can see moving forward, we can find a solution we can all be proud of. I do see this as a pivotal moment in the history of the school district. I think we can invest in the current and future workers and send a message that they're valued, and the well-being of our employees and students is ultimately what matters the most. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with all you guys on making these changes. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to do public comments on non-agenda items, and we do have a public speaker card. So I will go ahead and read the little blurb, and then we'll get moving. A person wishing to be heard by the board shall first be recognized by the president and shall then proceed to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on non-agenda items. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. And our speaker card is for Ronnie Gold.
Hello, board, cabinet, everyone. I am here today because I wanted to talk about Ione Elementary School. Both of my kids attend that campus, and I'm not here to criticize anything about what the sewage issues today because I don't know what I would do if I was in those shoes. I did want possible clarification because back in November, I happened to be at the right place and right time and overheard that this is Miss Cassidy's room, which is a TK classroom, all the way to the right if you are looking at the playground. And I had overheard that the septic tank at the time was having issues and that they were pumping a certain amount of septic and sewage out to relieve it because the pumps had gone bad and it was so old that they couldn't find a new pump. They were either going to try and retrofit or refurbish the one that they had. And I just wanted to know if the problems that are happening today were because A, that did not get fixed, or B, maybe it did get fixed and something went wrong with the way it was fixed. Or you still don't even know if where the problem is stemming from because it's a large issue, I understand. What I would like to see is money be thrown at this situation. And I know that money is obviously short everywhere, but I watched money be thrown at consolidation, and I would like money to be thrown at this issue because it is a very large issue. I'm sure you all know a lot of students attend this campus. I want to drive by. I want to see crews out there tearing stuff up. I want this fixed obviously as soon as possible, but I do appreciate the measurements that have been taken and what can be done to still have school held there. I will play devil's advocate as well because I feel like some of you have said this before or your frustrations. I understand it is very frustrating to get online and see hundreds of comments basically thrashing you guys, thrashing this. And then you turn around and there is no one in this room every time. And I do share that frustration with you guys. It is very annoying seeing hundreds of moms and dads and other parents at pickup and drop off every day and not one of them can show up. And it's hard to take us serious. I do understand that. And I just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me voice my opinions and my feelings every time I come up here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we will go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Oh.
Sorry, Madam Board Member.
Uh-huh.
I didn't fill out one of those comment cards.
Okay.
I didn't know I had to do that, but I just wanted to ask about an item that's coming up and just kind of ask the procedure of how we address that. Because we have questions respecting this University of Massachusetts Global, what it is, and whether the public will have an opportunity to weigh in.
Can she fill out a comment card for?
So is that something that we should wait? I don't see the opportunity through the board agenda for us to comment on that.
It is a discussion action item. If you just want to grab a speaker card from Desiree, and then we will call you up when that item appears on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Madam Board Member. And then what is required of this? Because I know that previously there was some comment by members who attended some of this meeting that specific identifying information was being required of the voting public before they're allowed to speak, and that's a violation of the Brown Act. So I don't mind us coming up and speaking, but I don't think this is actually proper.
Okay.
I don't know whose idea it was to require these, but I don't think it's proper, and I feel more comfortable not doing this.
We don't require it. We just do it to keep order. So if you do not want to fill out the card, we will call you up when we get to that item.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Sure.
You're welcome.
Okay. So we will go ahead and proceed with the consent agenda. Did anybody have any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
I would just like to know, is there going to be any discussion on the item 3 regarding the school accountability report cards?
No, because this is a yearly item and it's all made public and it's typically on consent.
Okay. Well, I guess I can make.
Yeah, then.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going through the attachments and looking at the various ratings, and it seems like a broken record. We've had conditions of our schools. We've had the issues with Ione this morning, and when you look at the document regarding Ione Elementary, numerous pages on the issues at that school, and I'm hoping at some point we're able to make headway in making these improvements, whether it's addressing it immediately, like today, I'm assuming that's an emergency situation, but we also need to look long-term so that we can finally get some stability for our schools as far as the facilities. I also noticed on one of the pages, I couldn't tell if there was a section missing called about, I think it was physical conditioning or physical education. It looked like there was a section missing, or maybe there just wasn't anything to add. That triggered one of my items, or one of the messages I've been receiving in the last few days regarding our youth sports. And, since school started back up, there's been public postings about the issues of not having referees, and also about not having coaches. And then in the last few days, I've received comments from the public about games being scheduled, and then they were never told that they had a game. Teams from other cities show up to play, and there was no one to play. And I'm really disappointed at, in this, we have this district AD position that was appointed, and that was supposed to address all these, and that's not happened. And, sports is really big in this county, and some of these students, maybe that's one of their only motivation to go to class or go to school so that they could participate. Well, they're missing out on that. And so I really want some answers on why our district AD position has not been on top of this, and why are we at this point where we're in the middle of the year, and it's been known that these sports are happening and nothing has improved. And so I really want to get to the bottom of that. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crow. Mr. Farrar, did you have any comments on consent or the accountability report card?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, Mr. Gill?
Just a little thing that I am grateful for and excited about. Certainly, since there has been a chronic absentee problem throughout the state of California, and certainly where I work as well, it is difficult to see growth when students aren't coming to class enough. And that is not just an Amador problem, that is a statewide problem. And so we are, according to those numbers and test scores, I know that we have a presentation later explaining how we're doing. I'm excited for that presentation on that. But it can seem that there's a lot of bad. And so I am thrilled and excited that there was at least some bright spots of growth, and grateful, for example, that Jackson Elementary had a huge leap in their CAASPP science scores, jumping from 21.7% proficient all the way to 39.62, which is dramatic. We had Pioneer Elementary with a huge leap in their CAASPP English Language Arts percent proficient, jumping from 32 to 42. So that's exciting. I had no idea that Amador High School has in English Language Arts scores above 70%, and apparently It's not as high as their glory days, I guess. It has come down a little bit. That's remarkably higher than where I work, and I'm part of the English Language Arts Department. We have work to do in Manteca Unified. And Argonaut High doesn't have quite that high, but they had a huge improvement from 55 to 64% proficient. And so, are we a little behind in math? Yes, that is a statewide thing. I look forward to the presentation with more information about that. But I just wanted to say, at least those are a few gems or things to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marzano, did you have anything?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. The first one was on 2 alpha warrants issued. I don't technically have questions about what the warrants are, but my question was, in my little sticky note comments, I wrote down, I feel like I got to get some information with regards to the MGM transportation and the crazy amounts of money we were paying them all the time. I cringe every time I read these warrants. How much longer will we be doing this? What is our plan moving forward? Can we talk about it for a second? 5-digit bill amounts for these buses, multi-line items. Do we know anything future-wise what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, I can follow up with you on that. Since this item isn't agendized as discussion about MGM, it wouldn't be something I can respond to now, but I can follow up.
So, okay, so we can't. Okay, all right. So then I guess that's a concern. If I could get some get back regarding that one. And then 3 alpha. Or before I jump to 3 alpha, Board Member Crow, I appreciate you bringing that up. Especially your point regarding sports is some of these kids, that's their motivation. And I know many of those in our county and across the nation. So I appreciate you bringing that up, bring it back to our district-appointed athletic director position. That's a good question. So I appreciate that as well. The school accountability report card, I like Board Member Gale's approach with, I guess, half full. The cup's half full, maybe. And I've done this for 6 years. I feel like a broken record, but I kind of feel like I've hit the half empty. I have the concerns of, like, the other side of that. So if we have 50% that are doing amazing and those are gems, well, what about the other 50% of kids that we aren't gemming? What are we doing? And then to jump on the general maintenance, I'm reading off my sticky notes. General maintenance on our sites. I'm reading these reports, and I'm seeing time after time after time after time documented peeling paint, rusted rails, missing switch covers, cracked floor tiles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've never seen so many ceiling tile reports. Like, I'm going to steal this joke from somebody that I discussed this with, but can we make, like, January ceiling tile month and just replace ceiling tiles throughout the district? Maybe order a pallet of them and put them in a warehouse or whatever. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. How much longer is this preventative maintenance, basic preventative maintenance, going to continue? And I'm assuming that we can't talk about this because it's not a discussion item. Is that correct, Mr. Critchfield?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then major concerns, I lost my spot. Rusty rails, yeah, just like walking around with a bucket of paint and paying a dude for paying a person, excuse me, to paint rails, or, you know, I feel that that's so much cheaper than down the road where we're at right now, and we all, I'm pretty sure, can feel that way, but the dropout rate, the increase. I have concerns with the dropout rate increase from 2021 to 2024. Being that kid, that's like something that I saw highlighted as I was going through this. Very concerned about the graduation decrease from 2021 to 2024. Or excuse me, yeah, the decrease or the increase in not graduating. And I guess because we can't discuss it, I won't go any further about those. But those are concerns that I have, and if I can get some information regarding that, that would be great. I appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you, James. I did have a question. For things like this where they have the potential to have a ton of questions or like the accountability report card, is there a way to agendize that as like a discussion item at some point, or does it have to go on consent?
It does not have to go on consent. We just, historically, SARC reports have been on consent, which is why we put them on consent
Okay,
this year.
okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? If not, can we get a motion, please, for item 12?
Motion that we approve consent agenda item 12.
I'll second.
Okay, and the roll call vote, Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Crow,
Yes.
Mr. Marzano,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Okay, so we will go ahead and move.
I'm sorry.
What was that?
Can I ask another question, Ms. Kayla, please?
Sure.
So with the question that Kayla asked and the answer that you gave, can we have these brought back for discussion?
The SARC reports as a discussion item?
Well, not necessarily the SARC reports, but like if we can't talk about them tonight, when can we talk about them?
So yeah, we can always get, as we do our agenda planning together, James, we can always add items like this as discussion with the board's
Okay.
request.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. So we move on to item 13, communications. It doesn't look like we have any. So that will bring us to our discussion action items. We're going to start with 14.1, the MOU with University of Massachusetts. And then we did have a public comment on this item, if you'd like to come up. Our public comments happen before the item, if you'd like to come up and speak. You can come up and speak if you'd like.
Okay, that's okay. I'm sure my voice projects pretty well here. So what I'm kind of confused about is why are we not allowed to ask a question before this will happen? Because if we have to ask a question before, but we're ignorant about it, it hasn't been discussed.
Yeah.
That doesn't really make sense.
Well, it's a meeting of the board in public, not a public meeting. So, and we don't often respond directly to the questions.
Okay, so what would be the best way then for members of the public to express our concern? If, for instance, the board talks about this, it seems like something that we as members of the public don't feel comfortable with, or don't want funds spent on. How do we express our concern about that?
You can definitely still make a public comment. You could reach out to the board. You could reach out to any of our cabinet members as well for responses also.
Okay, so I guess what I can do then is maybe I can say what our questions are, and then
Sure.
perhaps those can be addressed by the board members if it raises them during that item when it comes up. Would that work?
Yeah, you can come up. Yeah, come up. You can come up and ask questions and.
Great, okay, so all we saw.
Excuse me. I think if we're online, I think it'd be better if you were on a microphone so that people at home listening could hear.
So the people at home are not able to capture my voice?
Yeah. It is light without the mic.
Okay, so my concern is more just about that particular document, which we just had a chance to look over. Let me set this down. All I saw, we see here a memorandum of understanding with the University of Massachusetts. It doesn't provide any guidance of what that document is referring to, so we don't know what the program is that's referring to. All that is essentially terms of a contract and informing people, like, these are how many hours are going to be put in, this is what the compensation will be. But I read it through start to finish, and there's absolutely nothing in there that explains what it is. So I think it would be helpful for the members of the public to hear what that is and how it came to be and why University of Massachusetts was selected and what they're going to be offering, and then what the cost would be to the district. I'm guessing, although I can't figure because there's no explanation provided, that this might be some sort of teaching program that's offered through University of Massachusetts, and perhaps they are providing their students at a reduced cost in order to provide certain services for our district that our district lacks due to inadequate funding and staffing. But maybe I'm totally misunderstanding. So please, if you can provide an explanation of what that is, how it came to be, and how much it will cost, and how that particular organization was selected. Thank you, Ms. Parker.
Thank you. To go ahead and continue on with item 14.1, the MOU with University of Massachusetts, and that's Dr. Palazuelos.
Good evening, trustees and board president Parker. What is before you is a memorandum of understanding with the University of Massachusetts Global. Last year in 2023-2024, the Amador County Unified School District entered into an agreement with University of Massachusetts Global in being able to offer programming and opportunities for our staff within the district. This is a companion piece to it because we've now learned that there are folks in our district who have availed themselves to join their programs, and some of the programs that they have stepped into require field work. And so this particular agreement is very limited in that it would be teacher education, school counseling, school psychology, education administration or admin program, and educational specialist credentialing programs. So this essentially provides an opportunity for Amador County Unified School District to serve as a fieldwork site for one of our staff who would be in the program with University of Massachusetts Global that may be seeking licensure, in this case a credential from their teacher education program, to be able to utilize one of our sites here in Amador County Unified School District as part of that fieldwork experience. Fieldwork is required for all their programs, and it's an awesome opportunity for us to be able to continue to support our staff. And admittedly, with this particular memorandum of understanding, there are some components around costs. Some of those costs are borne by the university. Other costs are borne essentially by the employees, or I should say, the students that are in these programs and their registration costs. And that's all, they bear all those costs. We are not providing any funding towards tuition or any of the costs for any of these students. This is strictly providing a fieldwork opportunity. We have agreements like this with other campuses. Matter of fact, several meetings ago, we had the Fortune School of Education, which is now a partner with us. And what we try to do as much as possible is get programs that will be engaged with us, especially with fieldwork, because it gives us an opportunity to be able to look at prospective and promising candidates that could be going into the field of education in one of these sectors. So with that in mind, I think this is an awesome opportunity for us to be able to continue to expand the opportunities for staff that are interested in going into the field of education and give us an opportunity to be able to support them in their efforts.
Do we have any questions or comments on this item?
I do have one. Dr. Palazuelos, item I, the special provisions, rates, and payments, it says $200 cooperating teacher stipend per 8-week session. Is that a cost that's borne by the candidate, or the district pays that money to that cooperating teacher?
This is a stipend that is paid by the university to the individuals that are providing the cooperating teacher. We have a separate stipend schedule for mentors or for individuals that's part of our bargaining unit agreement with ACTA for folks that are providing that service. But in this particular case, these are essentially stipends provided by the university. Many universities do it. Some of the times they'll call them honorariums because we know that they pale in comparison to the amount of hours that someone will spend in providing support to a prospective and promising candidate.
Okay. Mr. Farrar, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Mr. Crow?
No questions.
Mr. Marzano?
no questions.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, so we already have an agreement with University of Massachusetts for essentially a teacher going through their credentialing program or somebody going through one of these programs, and this is the companion piece to make one of our sites that this person would work at as, to be used as their fieldwork site?
Correct.
Okay, and we aren't bearing any of the cost?
No, this is, the individuals bear their own cost in engaging in the program and registering and doing all the things, all their tuition is all paid by them.
Okay. All right. If nobody has any other questions or comments, we could use a motion for item 14.1.
I move to approve item 14.1, Memorandum of Understanding, University of Massachusetts.
I second that motion.
Okay, then the roll call vote. Mr. Gale?
Yes.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
And I'm also a yes. We will go ahead and move on to item 14.2, the CAASPP review with Ms. Horn.
Good evening. Before we get started, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite quotes from a former superintendent, and I want you to use this as our lens as we go through this. The first time we looked at the dashboard many years ago when it first rolled out, he reminded us all that data can be a hammer or a compass. And in this case, we are looking at our data from CAASPP as a compass to help us point in the direction where we're going. All right? It's on. I turned it on. One second, we're having technical difficulties.
Is it not going to each slide?
It's not changing.
Do we have a PDF file pulled up where you'd have to scroll, or is it a presentation that's pulled up?
All right, next slide, please. All right, so the objective tonight is to share the 24 California school dashboard results. There's no action required on this tonight. This is discussion and information for the board, and these results were released at the end of November, beginning of December of this year. Next slide, please. For a quick reminder, the way that the dashboard works is this color scale with what looks like a speedometer, with blue being the highest performing and red being the lowest performing indicator, and it moves along that spectrum. Next slide, please. The dashboard is like a report card. It communicates how schools and districts are doing. It does establish common language and common standards. It identifies student groups, schools, and districts so that we can really narrow in on where the support is best needed. Focuses attention on the 8 state priorities. 8 state priorities are for districts. We are a single, so counties actually have 2 additional priorities. So I always like to think when we look at this, we're looking at 10 priorities because of our unique nature as a single. And we do use the information from CAASPP as part of our LCAP in our budget planning. Next slide, please. So the 6 state measures, you'll see them there that were measured by the CAASPP and the dashboard, California dashboard, are there listed on the left. The 5 local indicators, those are a conglomeration of different information, the LCAP indicator document, our annual survey, and district leadership team reflections. And those are all incorporated in the dashboard. All the information I'm presenting to you tonight is publicly available on the CDE website and dashboard. All of this is out there for everybody. I'm just going to try to help make it a little more palatable. Next slide. Of the 14 different groups the state of California has identified, we have representation of 10 of those groups. And what that means is in order for us to have any statistics reported for these groups, they have to have a minimum of 30 people. With the exception of foster youth and homeless, their requirement is 15. So in any area where you don't see it bolded, it means we don't have enough of that demographic to make a reportable group. And in some of the indicators, you'll notice that occasionally that it gets grayed out because for the science test, for example, we don't have enough of a certain demographic group at 5th, 8th, and 11th. Okay? Next slide, please. Here's new. What's new and different for 24? So it's been a while. We've been hearing about it, but this year the California Science Test made its debut to the dashboard. It's been around for a very long time. It just didn't have a reportable dashboard matrix, and we have them this year. New for us this year also is if you access our dashboard, it actually has our current LCAP plan linked to our dashboard data. So if you're digging in to look at Amador County Schools or Amador Unified, the LCAP is linked. This year, when we are reporting out about our ELs, our English language learners, the ELPI is the English Learning Progress Indicators. They now have a separate subgroup for LTELs. Just as a reminder to the board, LTELs stands for long-term English learners, and that's 6 or more years in California schools. Oh, hang on. We have some updated differentiated assistant criteria, and this year the 5x5 grids are back. And actually, go for it, Des. This is that 5x5 indicator, and I just wanted to give a quick reminder of how this works. And we've decided to use the most complex one. In every other metrics we look at, we're always looking at bigger is better. Chronic absenteeism, you actually want that number to go down. So decreasing is better when we're looking at chronic absenteeism. But just as a reminder, if you happen to have school number 1, the purple school, although they both look the same, I apologize, but the one on the left is purple. They increased in chronic absenteeism. They started low, but they had an increase. So their indicator would be yellow because they showed an increase. Whereas the pink school had a decline. They started with a higher percentage of chronic absenteeism, but they declined, moving the needle in the right direction, and therefore they're green. So that's how to use those 5x5. Any of what I'm showing you tonight, you can go on, if you so choose, go home and dig into the dashboard and you can see those 5x5 grids, and it'll explain kind of how those colors came to be. Next slide, please. This is our overall results from the 2024. We have 1 green, 1 yellow, and 4 orange indicators from the dashboard. You'll see them listed. Overall, this is an improvement from our 23 when we had no green indicators. So we're moving in the right direction with some green. We'd like to see more, and we have begun the work to move the needle in that direction. Next slide. All right, so overall for English language arts, and I failed to mention, just for a point of refresher, 3rd through 8th grade and 11th graders take the CAASPP test. So this is the population we're talking about. We currently are sitting 38 points below standard. What that means is the standard is the lowest score that would be achievable. That means that we met standard. So that kind of middle where we would be meeting standard, we're 38 points below that as a district, and we did decrease this year by about 10 points, 9.8 points. California as a whole sits 13.2 points below standard. As indicated on the right-hand side, I always, and this goes to the old teacher in me, I always want to know how close were we? How close were we? Because it's kind of indication of a pencil pointing to the middle never told me. So in this case, our ELA indicator would have been yellow if our distance from standard was 12.8 points or higher. So the way that they compute this now, distance from standard is saying that lowest score, they take the average of the number of kids, what their score is, the distance from the lowest score to be considered standard, and that's their distance from standard. But the reason this appeals to teachers, especially those of us who came through the early iteration of this dashboard, is all growth is counted as positive growth. Even if you're not meeting standard, you're moving, your distance from standard is shortening. I did find an interesting fact, and didn't have time. I was digging into it a little bit more, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. Every correct answer that a student answers on a CAASPP test is equal to 3 to 4 points on the scaled score. So in this example, for 12.8, to increase by 12.8, it would have meant that our students needed to answer about 4 or 5 more questions correct. That's not per student, that's 4 or 5 more correct questions. To kind of
I have a question.
Yes.
4 or 5 out of how many total?
They range by the test. So.
And this is and you're on English language arts, so how many on that test?
Each of the grade levels tests have difference, and that's a good question. Gosh, I can tell you from my experience of giving it, some of them would be 70 questions, some would be 50, but it depends by the grade level. And then there are different versions of the tests that are out there. So the kids sitting in the classroom aren't all taking the same test, if that makes sense. Would you like me to find an average for you?
Sure. I was just trying to help my brain make this punch in the jaw less painful.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. Are there any other questions on this slide before we move on?
So you're just saying that overall, in the total number of students that took the ELA test, if they had answered 5 more questions correct, we would have been yellow instead of orange. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Next slide, please. All right. Math. Traditionally, math has been across the state an area where our students are struggling. You'll notice California is 47.6 below standard. We are 76.6 below standard and decreased by 5.7 points over this year. Our math indicator would have been yellow if our distance from standards were 8.7 points higher. Math is an area that we all are aware has been a struggle, is a struggle, continues to be a struggle, and we have members of our school district who are sitting on state community practices to help with the new mathematical framework. So as those are being rolled out, we're hoping to see some real work being done in this area. Next slide, please. All right.
I have a question.
Sure. Back to math.
Well, this may be for all of the slides,
okay.
Subject slides, but so I'm reading 38 points below standard, decreased 9.8, and then to the right of it, California 13.2 below. So what was California's standard, I guess, for each one? Did you put that on here, or am I missing it?
I did not put that
because
on there.
California was, the state was 13.2 below what?
The standard, the minimum points to have achieved to say they were meeting standard. So whatever the grade level and the subject standard was, they have a scaled score that has a minimum points.
And what is that?
That changes with each of them, but I can definitely get that for you for each of the subjects and the grade levels.
Okay.
I did have one other question, Patty, on these. How it goes red, orange, and yellow underneath our overall total of orange. We have, for example, on the math, or for the math one, you have red and orange. You've got American Indian, English learners, foster youth, Hispanic, homeless, or students with disabilities. Then orange, you have long-term English learners, 2 or more races, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and white. Are these just because we want to know that, or is there something that you do differently for these individual groups of children in that aspect of like how we teach them, or is that just because we have to have it?
The differentiation comes via the dashboard. They break it out by this. Remember the slide with all of the 14 different? So each of the dashboard areas breaks it out by that so that you can look at the subgroups. So if you are giving targeted instruction to certain subgroups, you can start to see that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I make one little comment regarding the math thing. And yes, that's what the dashboard does. They just choose to break it out, I think, probably with the intent to make sure that we're not ignoring any particular group of students. But I love what you said already about that all growth is growth. If it's any comfort to anyone, the school I work at that does have a significantly larger English learner population, our math score is even worse than Amarillo County. East Union High School has 103 points below standard. But, and a lot of that is our English learners, but because we increased 19.3 points above last year, that growth means we are in the yellow. And so I do think that moving forward, we can certainly see the indicators grow. And although it might feel like the sky is falling, it's not. This is a problem everywhere, and certainly there is room for improvement, and thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for pointing out some of the growth from the SARCs. I think that's important to note that we do have bright spots this is just the overall district, kind of big picture lens. Any other questions? Should I go on with science? Are we ready?
I think so. Yeah,
all right. Science. Exciting. The 5th grade teacher in me is so excited by this because we've been giving the California Science Test forever and ever, and only the teachers who gave it seemed to be excited by the scores. So I was excited to see this. The 14.5 points below standard is where our test scores were last year. The reason you don't have a color is, remember, that color indicator, as Mr. Gale just pointed out, indicates the change from year to year. This is the first year the CST, California Science Test, is being reported, so we have no change. The tests were given last year, but because they were not reported in this form, they're not considered a change metric. Next year, we will have a color for this. But that increase of 1 point was over the previous year, so over our 2023 scores, we increased 1 point. So we actually were on par with the state last year. This is one of the times we're right on par with the state, or even hopefully a little bit better if we're that close. I'd like to see that. Our breakout on the side again won't have any color because there's no change, but this will show you where our groups are breaking out with their test scores in the California Science Test. And just for information, that's taken in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. Next slide, please. All right. This is the ELPI, or the English Learner Progress Indicator. Again, this indicator has a new component this year where they're breaking out long-term English learners, or LTELs. Long-term English learners have been something that the state has been paying particular attention to for a while. So you'll see that 42.9% of our students made progress, and this is on not the CAASPP test, this is on the LPAC test, so the English Language Proficiency Test. And in order to make progress on this test, students have to make 1 point, or move 1 point up. It's a 4-point test, and they need to show movement or maintain a 4. If they were a 4 last year and maintained a 4 this year, it's counted as progress. And if 2 more of our students had made 1 point of progress each, we would be in yellow. So we're very, very close to that jumping point, if you will. Graduation rate, next slide, please. Our green for this year, we are 93.2% graduation rate. The state is sitting at 86.7. We're beating the state average. And we increased over the year-to-year average 1.9%. If 6 more students had graduated, we would have been blue. So we were very, very close to being the highest for graduation rate. And this is graduating from a comprehensive high school with a diploma.
One little comment on that one. I'm particularly excited that our students with disabilities are in the green on that category.
That was really awesome to see, wasn't it? All right, the next one.
Real quick.
Yes.
So when there were 14 different groups, we were represented by 10 of them. And now orange here we have homeless, which wasn't one of the 10. And we don't have results from all 10. It looks like the one we just looked at represented 6 different groups. What did the other 4 groups do?
I'm looking.
I mean, shouldn't all 10 groups be represented under every one of them?
The indicators on here would be that at the high school level, we don't have enough to report for those groups. So there's not at least 30 individuals, so they don't get reported out.
Okay, so why do we now have a heading homeless when it's not one of the 14 indicators?
It is number 13. It's called students experiencing homelessness on the indicator.
Fair enough.
Sorry, I just didn't type the whole students experiencing homelessness.
Well, I didn't read the whole thing either, so.
Sorry about that. I'm like, oh, well, got a little lazy with my typing. Sorry. Are we good on that?
I got another question, I guess. So if you look at these previous slides where, there's room for improvement. And then when you look at the graduation rate, we're in the green. I'm not trying to be rain on the parade, but does that say we're graduating students that are not prepared for higher education?
This is a great question. The next couple of slides are the college and career readiness slides, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But definitely, Mr. Crow, this was a conversation that among cabinet, we started looking at the difference with our graduation rate, and then our indicators bears deep reflection in trying to figure out what's going on there and what is that telling us.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Crow.
Awesome. Any other questions, Mr. Marzano?
No. I unfortunately printed this out in black and white, being a shapes and colors guy, so I'm struggling, but I'm getting there. No, I don't have anything at this moment.
Well, Mr. Marzano, if you would like, when you get back, if you want to set up a time, I can go over it with you too in color and we can redo it.
No, but when I looked at it in the computer and days before, it was color. I'm just saying, as I'm going back, as we're going through it, I have numerous thoughts and numerous questions in my head, but what Mr. Crow had said was one of them, because are we preparing our students for whatever the next level is? But then I just can't shake it's a small number, but it's a number of the non-graduating.
Exactly. And thank you for pointing out. It's important to remember, as well as the quote about compasses and hammer, my other favorite data quote is, good data just asks more questions. The better the data, the more your questions. So as we get into this, those are the questions we're looking at as well. If we want to jump go ahead.
Is it fair to say, is it, and help me, I mean, call me a negative Nancy, I've been called worse. But I'm just thinking, like, gosh, in my head, looking at these numbers and these graphs and these percentages, the percentages are kind of low already. The standard in the bar is already low. I mean, we really shouldn't have any non-graduates. Of course, there's certain circumstances, don't get me wrong, I understand that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think The next couple of slides are where, for me, we're starting to make some movement with our kids who may be comprehensive. Traditional A through G track is not for them, with our incredible work with CTE. And that may be what we need to kind of delve into. But again, these are all excellent questions, and I'm so glad that you guys are seeing the same thing we are, so that we can start adjusting and going in the right direction. Next slide, please. On that, our college and career indicator explained. I have spent more time trying to decipher this slide with more notes on this thing than I maybe did on my master's thesis. So college and career indicators are the readiness indication. The best way I can explain it is it doesn't truly capture what I feel we're doing here in this county. So in order for a student to be considered prepared for college, you'll notice it says they have to meet one of the 11 different methods presented below. But if you're savvy and look, at least 3 of those methods require multiple things. So it's not just 11. You have to pass the CAASPP test with a level 3 or higher on both ELA and math. If you take AP exams, in order for this to count, you have to get a 3 or higher on 2 AP exams. The college credit, our CTE kids only get any credit for that when they complete the pathway and pass a CAASPP with 3 or better in English and math. So the indicators here are a little bit of a misnomer. I just wanted to put that out there as we're really looking at our graduate rates. And part of the work that we're looking at going into this year is that, Jared has brought it up a number of times, we're looking at our graduation requirements. And we want to make sure when we take a look at those requirements, not only are we aligning them and revising them for what needs to happen, but we want to look at the rigor and make sure that our kids are getting the rigor as well as the necessary things. And keep in mind that if we're going to be looking at this indicator, which if you'll show the next slide, this is the one that is a little bit difficult when you think of all the work that we're doing with CTE and our students, and we have 31.2% prepared, and that decreased by 2.4. And at California, the rate is 45.3 on college and career. This one was one that I looked at and said, if 13 more students had been prepared, and I went, well, what does that mean? And when I went back in, the criteria to meet this is almost unfair in a lot of ways. And it's a difficult one to be able to bring to you and not be angry about it, because I don't feel like it's measuring the students fair. And then when you say they're not ready, whereas we may have identified they may not be ready, but it's not in this indicator, there's other things we need to pay attention to. All right, next slide. Oh, I think we skipped one. We should be on chronic absenteeism, I think. There we are. Chronic absenteeism, our yellow. We decrease, this is, again, remember the one indicator where decreasing is good, increasing is bad. So actually there's another indicator, but this is one we'll talk about right now. Decreasing by 4.5% was good. 21.1% chronically absent, very encouraging. We're continuing to work on this. Remember, chronic absenteeism means missing 10% or more of the school year. We are launching the end of this month a digital campaign with the company that we use for our attendance to help really nudge people and get them to understand where their student is personally with attendance, and if they're getting close to being chronic, text and emails to say, hey, your student is getting very close to a chronic absenteeism. So we're hoping to see that number continues to decrease. Next slide. suspension rates. 6.8% is our suspension rate. California is 3.2%. We increased by less than 1%, 0.3. We began the work to look at this at our principals meetings earlier this year, reviewing the discipline matrix that we have through Aries and our dashboards there. But we're looking at the jump to yellow would be 26 fewer students suspended. Next slide, please. This gives a numeric value to each of the colors and then gives you an average. Our overall average rating on the dashboard is 2.4 in all of the metrics combined. If you did the same thing for the state of California, it's 2.7. Next slide. This is interesting to me because when we talk about our uniqueness or comparison, this compares us to 10 other similar districts in size and demographics, of which we're in the top 3 for chronic absenteeism. We have some work to do with our suspension rates and our college and career, and then how we fall with English, language arts, and math is right there in the middle. So this is like districts in size and number of Title I percentage. And if you are so interested, and you, board members, you have this presentation, if you click on the underline thing on the right, it'll show you the actual districts in comparison and what their demographics are. Unless someone's dying to know what they are right now, I can tell you real quick. Anybody have to know? Okay. Next slide. So because we have some work to do, we are eligible for differentiated assistance in year 1 because we did not meet the state standards on these student groups or these indicators. And so this in differentiated assistance just means that usually the county office would provide that to a school district. You're laughing. I know exactly why you're laughing. So for a single, this becomes a bit of a challenge. Typically, our geographic leads provide us our differentiated assistance. In the past, it has been Sacramento County Office of Ed. And I do know that there has been some conversation and maybe work being done at the state superintendent level about maybe letting the small singles manage their own differentiated assistance. I'd love to see that, but if not, our geo lead is COE, and they will be the ones helping us get some additional resources to help support these groups of learners. All right, that's the end of the CAASPP overview, and I know the burning question that I can see, but I'll wait and see if you guys ask what I think is coming. Any questions?
We'll start at the end. Mr. Gill, any questions?
So I apologize for laughing.
No, I know why.
Being transparent. It's just, we get extra help from ourselves. And so my only question is, if we are eligible for differentiated assistance, does that mean additional money from the state or not so much?
The way it has worked traditionally, do you want me to? The way it has worked traditionally is that the money is given to the geo lead to help support the districts. So therein lies some of the issue with a single. As of today, I was on a call and have yet to hear what the plans are for the DA for this coming year.
So sorry to interrupt. So you're telling me, you said the geo lead, and that's Sacramento County Office of Education?
Yeah.
So you said that they get the funds to help us?
To support us.
And realistically, how much support are we getting from them, would you say?
I wasn't here for the last, I was in a different district when they had differentiated assistance, so I'm going to defer to Mr. Critchfield. He was here.
I think it's gotten better. I mean, again, with me being CBO the last 7 years, I wasn't as intimately involved with it. I know that, assigning a county to help us when we're not even in their county, it's not a level of support that's ideal. And that's nothing against Sac County. I don't think they're the problem. I just think the structure is the problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Farrar, any questions?
No additional questions.
Mr. Crow?
Only, I guess, one question is, we have a plan in place to hit these sore points.
You want me to give you some highlights of the
Yes,
plan?
please.
I won't go into the whole plan, because next month I'll be back with our LCAP mid-year review, and you'll get a little bit more of it. Just some opportunities for growth. Obviously, like I said, a compass. So I'm going to give you some of the highlights, and I will have forgotten some, I guarantee. So somebody will be texting me and as we're talking. And so next month when I come back, I'll say, here's the things I forgot. So we've already begun work with our 6 elementary schools this year have instituted a power half-hour intervention schedule where we're providing targeted intervention. And we were able to do that because we coordinated around a master schedule so that we can improve the use of our campus folks so that we can give as much intervention and help as possible by being efficient with our timing. Like I mentioned, we have a digital campaign starting January 28th that will help. It's 3-pronged. It is actually a warning and it's a celebration campaign. If people are improving their attendance, it sends texts and emails. Yay, your students doing great. And it also, if you ever had the opportunity to be a SMUD customer, you would have ever seen the thing, your power usage, your neighbor's power usage. It does the same thing with student attendance. Your students' attendance, the other kids in their grades' attendance comparison. So we have that starting and to help try to raise that chronic absenteeism. We started this year and continue through our MTSS and our principals and MLT training with UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, which helps our principals, alongside with one of their teacher leaders, are being trained as trainers to go out and train the staff on good teaching habits and tricks and tips and pedagogy in order to reach all learners, so that when we're looking at those subgroups, Universal Design for Learning takes into account how everybody in the class learns, and the teacher can anticipate those barriers, remove them, and deliver content, good first, high quality instruction so that everyone has access. And we'll continue that training through next year. We already have that going. We're starting work right now with the K2 reading screener. You'll hear more about that. I'll be coming back to you. The state of California has adopted some reading difficulty screeners for kindergarten through 2nd grade, so we can early identify reading struggles and start targeted intervention early, because we know with everything, early intervention could turn the tide and help those kids overcome those reading issues early on. And like we've talked about at the high school level, we're reviewing and revising those graduation requirements and looking at the courses and the rigor and putting together programs that are going to help prepare our students as best as possible. And it would be a shame not to mention all the work with CTE that continues to be done to help our kids who sometimes explore their pathways that way. And for some of the kids, as Mr. Marzano pointed out, sports is sometimes one of the things that brings kids to school. CTE also has the opportunity to keep kids engaged in school by giving them real-world experience. Just a little bit. We know we have a lot of work to do. The groups that are working on it, the principals group, the collaboration, we have the joint collaboration. Everybody's going to be looking at this same data. I'll be presenting that to all of these groups so that strategic plan leadership next week, we'll all have a chance to look at it, digest it, and then figure out where we go from here and how we move that.
Thank you.
Mr. Marzano, any other questions? Or comments?
I have a couple. I'm just trying to memorize key phrases that I either need definitions for or a little more explanation, targeted intervention. Can you touch on that a little bit? And then with that, what is it? And is it the kids who are in this who are reflected in this dashboard that receive it? How is it going to help? And then when do we find out if it even works? Again, I've been through quite a few of these, and they've all been similar. How do we know? And then my other question was, so the state's we don't want to depend on Sac County. That is what our MTSS is for, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I ask this question every time, and I get told, well, that's when we create the MTSS and kind of plan accordingly. And okay, that's the answer every time, and we're still here. What are we going to do different? That's all. I know that's a lot.
No, I think I can get it.
Miss Patty, I don't ever want to seem too harsh. Sometimes you guys get agenda items, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these poor people got to take this. And it's not personal. I just, I can't be the only one that thinks like this or has these concerns.
No, I don't think you are. I appreciate that. But I think I can roll I'm going to attempt to answer all of your questions, and I'm going to explain a process real quickly, if you will. So you mentioned MTSS, which for people who don't know is the multi-tiered systems of support. This year, one of the things that we've started doing, and it helps us focus on students, is COST team. And COST, we love our acronyms, right? Is a coordination of services team. And so we have a group of people at each site who sits down and looks at kiddos who are struggling for either academic, behavioral, whatever the case may be. They have a group of individuals, the principal, counselors, teachers, campus monitors. There's various people who are on the COST team. So they take a look at that student. And I'll give you an example. We'll just say the student's Patty. Patty's struggling in reading. She's having a really hard time. So what happens is over the course of the year, 2 or 3 times a year, the teacher gives an assessment to see where Patty is with her reading ability, and she's pretty far below class, the rest of her peers. So the COST team, that MTSS COST team, will look at it and go, okay, what's going on? Let's see if we can figure this out. So a targeted intervention would be they look at Patty's reading scores from those assessments, because remember, this CAASPP is what we like to call summative. It's the end. It's the sum of all the learning from 2024. Throughout the year, the teachers are using what we call formative assessment. That helps form the plan and move the student where they need to be. So one of the formative assessments identifies that Patty's struggling with phonemic awareness, which is sounding out, letter sounds. So they put Patty into a targeted intervention group for half an hour a day, 4 days a week. She goes and works just on phonics with other kiddos who are struggling with phonics. They give her that intervention. Typically, that cycle is about 6 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks is what we call an RTI cycle, or a cycle of intervention. And then they'll reassess Patty and see how her learning is going. If she's making growth, they know they're on the right track. They continue to give her a steady diet of that intervention to get her up to grade level. Maybe she's not making good growth. At 6 to 8 weeks, when they do it again, they go, we don't like it. We're not seeing it. We're going to give her another try. We're going to try something a little different. We'll bring in a different tool we're going to use. It could be a different curriculum or something. They attempted another 6 to 8 weeks. They come back together, and she's still not meeting the needs. Then they start looking at maybe there's a greater need. Maybe we need to look for something deeper. So that's what targeted intervention is. It targets the exact needs of the student. Did that answer James, did I get them all with that?
Yes, that helps me out. And have we? Is this process that we are going to implement something new? No, we've been doing it already, right?
We have been doing it. You've heard it called RTI before. Mm-hmm. You've heard it called, in this district, I believe, Walk to Learn was one of the iterations it was called before. It's been done. It's had different names. The difference this year is we've added part of that MTSS framework is we've added that cost team so that it's not just the teacher alone trying to figure out how to meet the needs of the students. There's a team of people who can help design that for all the kids.
Okay, I appreciate that. I asked if we were doing something new because, they say you do something
right
repeatedly and you get the same, I hope and pray that we figure this out.
Well, we're, like Mr. Gale pointed out, we saw some bright spots in some of the growth, and I think that some of that is attributed to the focus that we're starting to put. I am absolutely hopeful and very optimistic that we're going to see some real growth coming out of this year, the cost system, and really being able to focus on student needs. That's my hope. Oh, Mr. Marzano, I don't know if you could hear that, but one of our audience members said, "It's working, my son is reading." So you know what? The old teacher in me is jumping up and down. Thank you very much for sharing.
So, clarification. Sorry, quick clarification. Did you say that the Power Half Hour is new this year at the elementaries, or just cost is new this year?
Cost is new. Power Half Hour in its last iteration was called Walk to Learn, or RTI. The difference is at each site, it was called something different and done a little bit different. We tried to standardize it across the elementary schools this year to help provide a more universal standard delivery of instruction.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have one question. James had mentioned that he's seen a lot of these reports. Do we get any metric after you've reviewed this where you set goals that when we get this report again, we can see how we did against those goals and, if the improvements that you put into place actually worked? I mean, right now, you see this report, we see it next year, we really don't know what you were hoping to get to.
Great. That's a great question. So those goals are part of our LCAP, and next month I will bring those. And so when you see the percentage goals, that the LCAP was written last year for a 3-year cycle. So you'll see the year one, mid-year, where are we to those goals? And we'll be able to just take this information. A lot of times both this and the LCAP mid-year are put together in a presentation. To me, it just felt like way too much information. So we pulled them apart. Did I answer? Okay.
Yeah, I think that last year you weren't sitting here last year when we did this, but we had talked about it with the previous person that was here, and I think we had discussed, and maybe I'm just going a little crazy, but we had talked about having more of just a simple, going through the presentation, which I thought it was great, by the way, going through the presentations and having some sort of simple, very simple breakdown of this is where we were last year, this is where we were this year, just what we can see in that way. I think that would be super great to see something like that, just a companion to some of this stuff. And then I guess I have a lot of thoughts about this because I also have seen the previous reports. I've taught in the district. I was a student in this district as well. I think for me, one of the biggest things that I feel like hinders some of these scores, number one, I have never counted test scores as being the end all be all to what kids actually know. and if they're ready to graduate and all of these things. There's so many different things besides the CAASPP test that decides that. However, these are the numbers that we have to go off of and look at. And so I think James brought up a really interesting point. If you're looking here and you're talking about our graduation, we're around 4th in comparison to our other districts, but we're 9th in college and career readiness, if those are the numbers that we're looking at. So that does beg the question, are we lowering standards, or are we just are kids just floating through, or are we, that's kind of my question, is are kids just kind of getting passed along, and are we going to be, hopefully we will be remedying some of that so we can see a little bit more jive between that graduation rate and college and career readiness. And again, that's not to say that, like you said, there was some pretty significant things to be met to make a college or career ready individual graduate. That being said, also, is that I think that we've had a huge problem in this district of turnover, teacher turnover, all these different things, and we talk about the programs we want to implement, but a lot of times we either don't have the position filled, or it's hard to find somebody to fill the position, or we have to cut the position for budget reasons or whatever it is. And I feel like that is a huge issue when it comes to the continuity and how these scores are coming in each and every year. So I'm really hoping that we can make some strides towards some of those more, I think, root of the problem issues versus, and not just necessarily that kids just can't read anymore. So that was my comments, but thank you for the presentation. It was I liked it.
Kayla, I have one question that popped into my head when you were talking, the turnover. Can I ask a question about the turnover and the LCAP?
Sure.
Is every LCAP a 3-year situation?
The LCAP is written in 3-year cycles. It's updated every year, but it's overhauled every 3 years.
And with the turnover, and so do superintendents have their own vision and what they want to tackle?
James, so I was waiting kind of towards the end to make comments because Patty, just to back up, just in case people didn't know this, Patty started in October in this job. So, and I appreciate what you said, James, earlier about it not being personal. She's delivering information based on things that occurred last year. And like she said at the beginning, data can be a compass. Here's my issue. I'm probably going to be a little less polished in what I say than what Patty was. She was very polished. If you have a district that has as much turnover at the top in key positions, you lack consistency. And students and teachers, well, humans, typically thrive on consistency. And if we have high schoolers in math classes who have taken math classes throughout their career and had 6 or 7 different publishers of math textbooks that they've had to follow, how do we expect a kid to perform at a level with such inconsistent delivery? That is not a teacher problem. That is not a student problem. That is a structure problem. And so while it's hard to get into every detail of what we're doing, a big part of this is we have to be more consistent. We currently have 3 different math curricula at the elementary level right now. As a district office, how can we provide the support to the sites when we're using 3 different math curricula? That's not effective. And so when you asked, what do superintendents have to say about this? I have a lot to say about it. And I was a high school principal that worked really hard to try to improve our test scores with the same motivation as Kayla. It is not the end all be all, but it does tell a story. And one of the things that we did that I found to be successful was simplify and be consistent so that everybody knows the direction we're taking. And that is what we are discussing now We have key teams in place that involve teacher leaders and administrators so that they all have a say on this. So it's not just the district office says this is what we're doing, but we have lacked consistency. It's nobody's fault. It's just a fact. And if, I mean, you just look at our history of turnover, then you would understand that that's a big part of our challenge here. And the goal right now is to bring some consistency year over year so that we can move the needle in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Can I make one more little comment or clarification
Yeah,
based on
go
my
ahead.
understanding of all this? And I agree with things have been said, and it would be ideal if we had in some kind of easily digestible manner, a trend over time when it comes to this one metric test scores, because it is just one metric. And at the high school level, only 11th graders, right? But and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, Patty, but that's why they came up with this interesting 5x5 matrix and the color scheme they did, is that we can see at a glance, based on the color, whether we're having growth or not. So for example, East Union, again, we did worse than Amador County with math, but because we're growing, we got a better color this time around.
That makes sense.
And so that's what that's supposed to be, which is why I didn't share this with everyone, but I did share with Patty when I saw the board packet. In my educational career, this is probably the most clear presentation I've ever seen on the dashboard, because she took the time to be aspirational and say, okay, how close are we to meeting that next mark? Because that's what those colors are the benchmarks that indicate and are meant to indicate in a clear, simple way the truth of where we are. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely room to grow, and I'm excited for all of the visionary things we want to do. But just for point of clarification, that multi-year concept in a way is built right into the color indicators, at least it's trying to.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Patty. Yeah. Okay. We are just going to keep public comment to the beginning of each item, discussion or action item. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 3, the elementary school boundary changes with Mr. Critchfield.
Yes, thank you. You'll notice the bulk of the presentation is identical to what was brought to the board at the, let me get the date correct, at the November 13th board meeting. This was originally brought to the board on October 9th as a discussion item, and the board provided me with quite a bit of feedback. I altered the presentation, seemed like I was able to help you as a board kind of grasp where we were going on November 13th, and so presented the new data moving us in the right direction. So again, this is very repetitive. I don't know if I've ever had an action item where I've had it as a discussion item twice before bringing it to you as an action item. And so I'm going to summarize, but obviously if I'm missing anything or you have questions, we can go back to that. The data that's proposed obviously shows that when you don't touch your school boundaries for an extended period of time, then families and students start to make decisions for you on what makes the most sense on where students should go to school. And when our knowledge is our elementary boundaries haven't changed for at least 40 years, if not longer, then of course you're going to deal with some challenges. And having 385 students transferring in and 363 transferring out of schools that they should be attending, that clearly shows that we have some things that we need to clean up. And so most of these boundary changes, I got to be honest, I expected more feedback or pushback from the community, and in the people I've talked to, I think because we didn't do anything drastic, for most people it made sense what we were doing. We did hold the community meeting like I said we would. It was not well attended. I really appreciated the people who did come. They had great questions, and I felt like we had a good conversation, but it was not well attended. And so I didn't want the board to make a change like this without it being abundantly clear to the public what we were intending. And this, again, has come to you in October, November, a public meeting in December, and now January. And so our recommendation is to stick with what we proposed at the November meeting with those changes. And so when you get further into the presentation, there's a current and proposed slide. And I don't know, Des, if you can get that up on the screen for the members of the public to see, but I know our board can access the presentation on your devices. But the current and proposed screen shows you the changes that are being made to these boundary areas and how we're working around the edges and properly assigning those. Perfect. Thank you, Des. So if you could scroll down a few slides and I'll let you know. It's going to be two maps side by side. That is the one. Okay, and so you can see our elementary school boundaries and kind of get the 30,000 foot view of the changes being made. Obviously, every street in detail is not on this map, but you can get an idea of neighborhoods and areas. And so then, Des, if you go to the next slide, then I have everything labeled by essentially the 8 areas that are impacted by these changes, if these changes were to be approved. And so, again, what the proposal tonight and what the recommendation is for board approval is to implement these changes as detailed in the presentation to take effect next school year, so the 2025-26 school year. But then to also make sure if action is taken, that we would have a policy that students that are impacted by this change will have the option to stay at their current school or transfer to the school that now corresponds to their new boundary. We will keep a paper trail to keep good track of this. So in other words, let's say you live in an area like Fiddletown and you are in Fiddletown Road, and technically that is currently part of Sutter Creek Elementary School, even though the route to get to Sutter Creek passes you almost directly by Plymouth Elementary. So if you are currently attending Sutter Creek, then you would have the option to stay at Sutter Creek on an inter-district transfer. This would not be our typical inter-district transfer policy. It would be because of the boundary change, you are automatically granted the inter-district transfer. We don't want to force families to move schools, as this will be a gradual progression towards students attending in the correct boundary. And then if you're on an intra, we have numerous intras on Fiddletown Road who already attend, then those families would get a notification. You know, congratulations, you're no longer on an intra, you are attending the school of residence, and so to clean up that whole process. So again, that highlights the 8 areas that are impacted. There's some other obvious ones like number 7 Sutter Hill, the Pinewoods Apartments weren't there 40 years ago. So the Ione Elementary School boundary went all the way to Walgreens, if you're familiar with that area, and we don't have any students in Pinewoods attending Ione Elementary. They're all going to either Jackson or Sutter Creek. And so it's just, it's been a long process, well thought out, lots of people involved, and making staff involved to make sure these are the best decisions for our students. And we want to make this recommendation tonight for your approval so we can move forward with our planning for next school year.
Okay, thank you. We'll just go down the line if there's any questions or additional comments. Mr. Gale?
No questions. The only comment is I deeply appreciate how improved the presentation has been over the past few months and how clear it is that most of the people have, as you said, have already chosen to move themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just one question regarding the grandfathering.
Yes.
So if you're grandfathered into a district right now, you can do that through the rest of your education, not
Through the rest of your elementary experience, yes, that absolutely. Yeah, it wouldn't be a 1
elementary
year.
or high school, wherever you're at right now.
Yeah, so remember, we're just making elementary boundary changes on this one, so this is just going to impact the elementary students. And so once they leave for junior high, we would then follow the junior high boundaries.
Thank you.
On the intra-district transfers, just to be clear for the public, this doesn't require them to fill out the form or?
No, we need signatures with intra-districts, but we will be reaching out to the families impacted. It's not going to have to, so we have a way through the program 5 maps, which I talked about at the other meetings, where if approved, we can then gather the data for all the students in the impacted area and split it out, who now needs an intra and who doesn't, and then we'll have staff do all those notifications to families to clear all of that up for them.
I just want to make sure that the parents know that, say they miss a call or something, that all of a sudden their kid's not being moved or anything like that.
Yeah, we're not shipping them out. No,
Okay.
we're not going to do that. Thank you, Shane. That's a good clarification.
Okay. James, did you have any questions or comments on this?
No, I didn't have any questions regarding the boundaries.
Okay. And I didn't really have any questions other than just, we have issues with transportation at the moment. So does this help kind of streamline in some capacity? I know it's not going to be like this huge major thing, but does this help kind of start to streamline some of those issues as well?
Yeah, we met with the transportation department multiple times to also help with efficiency there. It is not the end all be all. We know we don't have enough bus drivers, right? But it is, it will help the situation. But we're also analyzing transportation district wide that we'll need to talk to at another board meeting.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, so we would be looking for a motion for item 14.3.
I motion that we approve item 14.3, the elementary school boundary changes, including the understanding of the grandfather clause for existing students.
I'll second.
And then the roll call vote. Peter?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
James?
Aye.
And I'm also a yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our discussion and action items. We will move on to reports. Mr. Critchfield?
Thank you. Just a few things. I, again, want to thank staff for coming back and hitting the ground running after winter break. Everybody, I think, enjoyed their time off, and it was much deserved, and we're right back into the thick of things. There have been a lot of things already going on. We are planning for next school year. We've had an eighth grade kickoff night for our incoming freshmen. Our incoming high schoolers visited their campuses this week and got tours from our ASB students, and already in high gear and planning for next year. I should have done this at the beginning of the meeting. I want to excuse our 2 student board members, Molly and Peyton. The advantage and disadvantage of having students like Molly and Peyton is they are very involved and very busy. They are both also very good athletes. And so Peyton plays on the Amador High girls basketball team, Molly on the Argonaut High girls soccer team. And in this new league, there are league games on Wednesday nights. So when I talked to Molly the other day, she was like, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "We'll see you in March, Molly." It's going to be a reality of that. Molly was able to send me a statement this time. We'll have Peyton send one next time. So in a minute, I'll read their updated. Obviously won't be as good as when they do it themselves, but you only have me tonight. Just a couple other things to announce. With winter sports going on, we do have our first round of big games going on this week. Big game soccer is happening this Friday night. The girls' games are occurring at Argonaut, the boys' games at Amador. And then next Friday, January 24th, we have big game basketball. And we are keeping with the tradition that we started quite a few years ago, where the boys and girls will play in the same gymnasium. And so we'll have the boys JV game, then the girls varsity, and then the boys varsity will be the 3 games that take place on January 4th. And I believe for next week that's at Argonaut High. And then when they play again in February, it will flip to Amador. And so with that, I'm going to read through what Molly Gilliam wrote as our student board member. She said, recently at Argonaut, we have had a couple of different ASB events. First, our annual last day fun day, where on the last day of school before winter break, we set up a bunch of games in the gym and had an extended lunch. We did cookie decorating, gingerbread house building, ornament making, and other Christmas activities. This is one of our favorite traditions, and it was very successful this year. Then just this past week, we had 8th grade preview day. Similar to Amador, we have the 8th graders who are interested in going to Argonaut come tour the school, learn about electives, and pick out their classes. We get gave them shirts, and our culinary program provided them with a big lunch before they went back to their respective schools. It's a really fun way to get to know our future students and for them to make sure they are picking the classes that best suit their needs. And then she says, as for sports, the winter season has begun with basketball, wrestling, soccer, and ski and snowboard. And she just wanted to also point out that the Argonaut cheer team will be heading to Orlando next month for their national cheer competition. So again, thank you, Molly, and I have no other updates for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Peter, any report?
Nothing significant, just grateful that, one, the people that do come, thank you for attending. No, it's not easy, these can be long, but we deeply appreciate your presence. I am also very grateful for, again, the transparency and clarity behind the dashboard presentation and the elementary boundary changes. I have, as a member of the public who attended board meetings, I thought that it was pretty solid communication, but as a new board member, I am impressed by how well I have been supported in this transition to this new role, both by existing board members and by Mr. Critchfield. So just feel that communication is strong and gives me bright excitement for where we're going.
Thank you.
So I just had one question. I don't know if this is the right spot to ask it, but when on the consent agenda, we talked about the Stark reports. When do we get to discuss how those are rolled out to the different schools? Are they presented to the teachers? What do we do with that information so the teachers are fully aware of that? And if we're going to agendize that on a future meeting, that's fine, but I just want to make sure we are able to discuss that.
We can follow up with you on that.
Okay. No other remarks.
Okay, Shane?
Only thing I have is I just want to repeat what I said earlier. Sports are a big part of what our students look forward to, and the recent problems we've had as far as gym time and finding referees and coaches. I'm really hoping that we'll make some leeway in making improvements, and hoping to hear back something by our next board meeting that some changes have been made. Thank you.
James?
No, well, I do feel that we should definitely think about our students that have family members down in Southern California, along with the families in Southern California that are going through tough times. I've spoken to a couple of our students in our district, and their sadness and pain for their aunties, uncles, grandparents. So just keep SoCal in our prayers.
Okay, thank you. I did just want to give a shout out to people, the teachers, the staff members that are working all the time. It's a tough job. I've been there, but just a quick kind of moment that things do happen. Sometimes things do not go as planned throughout the day, and I get, as from a parent's point of view, that can be super frustrating, not going the way that you want it to go. Maybe communication wasn't the best, whatever it may be. However, please just keep in mind that when you're calling the school or you're coming to the school, any of those things, that the people that you are interacting with are the ones that deal with your kids every single day. Please don't come in and tell them to F off. Please don't call and say that. Please don't come in and scream in their faces. And that's not super common, but it does happen. And again, I know that situations are frustrating. But I do, for the first time in actually quite a while, I do feel like the staff at our schools, the cabinet members, people at the district office, and the board members actually do, whether you see eye to eye on exactly how we get somewhere or how things are done, that people that are here do actually care about what happens in our district, for the kids at the school, about the staff members and all of those things. So I just kind of want to keep that in mind in that way, and just hopefully that we can continue moving on. And I do always respect the people that come to the meetings and speak up, ask questions, those kind of things. I'm a big advocate for that. But to please give a phone call to the district office, give a phone call to a board member, give a phone call to people that might have an answer for your question instead of maybe just lashing out in your anger. So that being said, we will move on to our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 5th to be held here, and open session will start at 6:30. And with that, we are adjourned. Does anybody need to take a quick couple minute break, or should we roll right into the next meeting? Okay, let's keep on moving then. We're gonna go ahead and move right on in to our county meeting. Yeah. So we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. It looks like it's 8:44. All of our members are here. James is joining us from Hawaii. And are there any deletions or corrections to the agenda?
There are not.
Okay, and then it doesn't look like we have any presentations or recognitions. So we will move on to employee organizations. I don't see Ms. Lucas or Ms. Matheson. And I don't have any public comment cards on non-agenda items. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Did anybody have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? No? Okay, then we can go for a motion.
I move to approve the item 8 consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, and then the roll call vote. Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
And I am also a yes. Looks like communications, we don't have any discussion action items. But we do have item 11, we have information only, the personnel recommendations. Did anybody have any questions, or Mr. Palazuelos want to make a comment on that? No? Anybody else? Okay. And then does anybody have any additional reports to give? No? Mr. Gill? No? Mr. Marzano?
Sorry. No, I don't have any further reports.
Okay. Mr. Critchfield, anything else? Okay, I don't have an additional report either. So our next meeting will also be here Wednesday, February 5th, immediately after the USD meeting. And we are adjourned.